Okay, well, it's 3 o'clock. I guess we can get started.
Sounds good.
You ready? People
Yeah.
will be joining late, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
I'll just keep admitting people. But anyway, everybody, thank you for coming to this special Zoom meeting for the AADE MidCon, September 15th, 2020. Anyway, I'm Matt Hill. I'm with Knight Energy Services. Our special guest, Amanda Rico, PhD. Before we get started, make sure everybody signs up for the AADE MidCon Sporting Clays shooting tournament. It's Friday, October 16th. We need sponsors, we need volunteers, and we need shooters, so please spread the word. Also, if you're not a member of the AADE MidCon, please join us and become a member. Amanda, thank you again so much for volunteering your time today and helping our group and our industry in general. Amanda, everybody, is PhD, is a resume and editorial specialist with her company Rico Editorial Services. Today she's going to be discussing your resumes and LinkedIn hacks for beating the downturn, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yep, it's an interesting time. So yeah, thank you so much for having me on. This is a really awesome opportunity, and I'm glad to hear that you guys are still going to do the competition. I've been bummed to hear. I'm not sure. Do you guys know if F5 is happening or?
So we have canceled our F5 this year.
Oh man, bummer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always because it's so great. I mean, there's always so many really awesome recipes that are shared and going around and meeting so many new people. Yeah, that plus, casino night and all those really great events that you guys, that are always in the energy and oil and, oil and gas community. It's fun to go to those.
Yeah, last year we had quite a few interesting animals on display. Kangaroo, beaver. Yeah, the creativity is always amazing with everybody that comes through this.
A beaver on display. I can only imagine.
Yeah, it's something. The cooks are always amazing.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's awesome. Well, yeah, so definitely, really excited to be here. I don't know, am I able to, just want to make sure I can share my screen here.
You should be able to share your screen.
Okay, so it looks like you've disabled screen sharing, so maybe go in and.
There we go.
Awesome.
How about now?
Let's see, there we go. Perfect.
I'm going to turn off my video if you don't mind. I'm going to let you do
Go for it. Go for it, yep. Sounds like a plan. All right, so it's great to meet everybody, even if I'm not able to actually see you or meet you in person or shake your hand. I'm Dr. Amanda Rico, and it's really great to be here talking to the AAD audience. I've been talking to a lot of SPE people, AAPG people, NeoGeos, all over the place. And of course, for anybody who follows me on LinkedIn, it's really awesome to be able to engage with everybody there and have such a great platform during this remote period of life. It's a very unique time right now, and I think that it's been more and more relevant to be talking about resumes and LinkedIn and all sorts of different things, cover letters, anything you can do to kind of strategize and build your career out is you're just going to get ahead of the competition, because there's, as many of you know or are in really difficult positions right now, it's a really competitive market. So yeah, really excited to be here and to be talking about resume and LinkedIn hacks for beating the downturn, right? Starting to talk about preparing for the upturn. That's something that I might start rephrasing my my pitch, because I'm starting to see a lot more people get hired. So, not only just my clients, but also people that I chat with on LinkedIn. So yeah, so just a little bit of background on me. I specialize in resume building, editing, and career solutions for senior and executive level professionals. So that's where I primarily specialize, is senior and executive level professionals. And I'd say roughly 95% of my clients are in the oil, gas, and energy industry, which I love working with people in oil and gas and energy industries. My husband is also a senior drilling engineer, has been for about 11 years. So I've learned a lot from him. I still remember writing papers for him at university in the University of Oklahoma on diamond drill bits. So that was my first exposure really to anything that had to do with the oil field. And I was just kind of fascinated. I was like, man, you can use these to drill into all these different types of shale and rocks and stuff like that. So it's been kind of a passion of mine to learn more and more, and eventually get to where I am today. So yeah, 13 plus years of doing this. I've worked with TEDx speakers, healthcare executives, energy and petroleum managers, all over the place. So it's cool. I actually just had a talk with someone in Saudi Arabia yesterday. It was like 1 a.m. their time, but yeah, yesterday evening. So I talk to people all over the world, and it's really great to have that multicultural aspect to oil, gas, and energy. I'm also a Houston Business Journal oil and gas career columnist. So I team up with them, and I'm also going to be teaming up with a former Forbes writer on her new magazine called Oil Woman. So I'm going to be doing their career section. So looking forward to that as well. I also do a lot of stuff like this, professional development seminar speaking, and I've facilitated a lot of different events for career development alongside public officials and career diplomats and corporate executives, like the CEO of Halliburton, Jeff Miller, former CEO of GE, Jeff Immelt, and also Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner. So yeah, just a little bit of background on me. Yeah, so welcome to my masterclass on this. I'm not really pulling any punches on giving you guys tips. It's not going to be just basic stuff. I'm going to give you examples. A lot of them are going to be catered towards people who are in drilling. Like I said, my husband's a senior drilling engineer, so I know a lot of the acronyms. I know a lot about what you guys do, and I do a lot of cost controls, operations, business development. It's a wide range of skills that you guys have, and many, many, many of them are transferable. And I really want to emphasize that for those of you that are in a tough spot and wanting to career change right now, you have transferable skills. I know that it can be tough if you've worked, for 30 plus years in the Permian, thinking about, okay, how do I transfer to something new? But, have an open mind, think through the different things that you've done, write things down. I also really encourage a lot of people to write things down, because it's a lot easier to stay in your head. And rather than actually sitting down and thinking, okay, what did I do? I mean, I know I did AFEs, but if someone, didn't know what an AFE was, how would I explain that to them? And then you write out, kind of what that entails. So, the certain things I'm going to go over today concerning your resume and LinkedIn, but one of the main things I do want to say is that your resume and LinkedIn are tools, right? They're not a magic lamp. So I'll have some people ask me every once in a while, what's your success rate on writing resumes? And I always pause, because I have to remind them that I'm not a recruiter, right? I don't place people into jobs. I give them a tool. And I give them the best possible and most effective tool they can have to go on a challenging job market. But the resume is just a tool, right? So it is not the magic lamp that will, the end all be all of things that will get you in the door. But it is typically the first thing that someone sees, especially right now remotely, where people aren't necessarily going to meet you in person. So a resume is really, really important. A LinkedIn is extremely important, and I would honestly, you're probably going to hear me say this throughout the presentation, the resume and LinkedIn really go hand in hand. I'll have a lot of people ask me, is LinkedIn that important? Yes, it is vital. It is extremely, extremely important. And I know that there can be kind of a hesitation associated with LinkedIn and it being a social media platform. And I know that there's been, some things people have mentioned to me where it's turning into Facebook for professionals. it may be that there may be some, you know, people that use it that way, but please, please, please don't give up on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is extremely important for your career development. So yeah, a few things that I'm going to chat about today. Your audience. Audience is the most important thing for your resume, your LinkedIn, cover letter, anything that has to do with building your career online. Audience is always the first thing you should think about. Who is going to read it and why should they care? Right? I mean, coming from an English background, getting the doctorate, that was always the first thing. First major rule of you know, essay writing or any kind of writing really is that rhetoric is the most important thing. Rhetoric rules the world. So we always have to think about who is reading the document, who is reading your profile, and then consider how to build it appropriately for that audience, right? Are you wanting to build it for a recruiter's eyes? Well, if so, how do you want to target it, right? So a resume has to pass 3 sets of eyes. I always like to mention that as well, because sometimes there's a little bit of misconception that the resume goes directly to the decision maker. You know, that, okay, I send my resume in and it'll go right to the VP that's supposed to call me in for an interview. And that's just honestly not how it goes. So I always like to go through audience first, just to kind of clarify. And then some resume requirements, some hard and fast rules on those. There's a lot of questions about how you structure it, how's it supposed to look, what's the right way, what things are outdated. So a few things about that. And then building a standout LinkedIn profile is extremely important right now, and I'm going to give a few tips on those as well. All right, so who's your audience, right? So your resume has to pass 3 audiences, and I like to kind of name them a little bit. So first you have the gatekeepers, right? So you have HR, secretaries, admin assistants, people who are printing out your resumes generally and then plopping them on their desk. They have a stack. They have many, many, many resumes to go through. And if your resume looks like everyone else's, even if it has really solid content, it may not get picked up, right? So I always try to mention that in general, you're going to get a 7 to 10 second scan on the resume. That's pretty much all you're going to get, is 7 to 10 seconds for someone to scan through it and see if you have all the qualifications. Which is why, you know, I'm going to mention this later in my talk, really front load that resume. And what I mean by that is making sure that you have some really vital key accomplishments and details at the top of the resume. So rather than just launching into that work experience, really use that upper space to highlight what you do best, right? And there are different structures that you can use, and I'm going to give you some examples of how to do that. Right, so your second audience is computer scanning systems. There are some names here, Resume Extract, Workday, there's also Talos. All of these are pretty standard computer scanning systems that you're going to get with future, you know, Fortune 500s. I'm sure that you've all dealt with those frustrating job applications trying to submit your materials through, and you submit your resume and then you have to enter all the information all over again. It's super frustrating. But there are some, you know, a few hacks. I'm not going to go really into depth about the hacks on those, but the most important thing about computer scanning systems to mention is that you really, really need to use those job applications as a manual for writing your resume and for building your resume. So those scanning systems are extremely antiquated. They're very old. They're actually looking for a TXT format. That's ideal for them. That's what they're trying to scan, is just basic text. I mean, of course, a lot of the more advanced computer scanning systems now can pick up on more details and things like that. But for the most part, it's best to plan for building out your resume in a way that includes key phrases, terms, cherry-picked from those job applications. So this doesn't necessarily mean that you are, you know, literally copying and pasting large portions of the job description into your resume, because we have to remember our third audience, which is the decision maker, right? And we don't necessarily want that human audience to think that you literally just copy and pasted the job description. So there needs to be a fine line, kind of a combination between including those key terms and making it look relevant to what you actually do and fitting it in a way where it looks, you know, completely believable. You could walk into an interview and defend that resume. Any questions they would have would be answerable. All right. Right, so the gatekeepers, these audiences, what do they have? They have limited time, limited understanding of your material, and limited interest. And I have a random period and no other periods. Oh, my punctuation, it's killing me. Okay, so they require formats that are quick to scan, right? Like I said, that 7 to 10 second scan. Keywords that are easy to find. Yeah, so again, cherry picking those from the job descriptions, treating them like manuals. I want to go back to this limited understanding of material, because sometimes what can happen with career changers who are in oil, gas, and energy fields is that there are a lot of acronyms, a lot of terminology and phrasing that are not going to be understandable to an outside audience. So if you're career changing, be very, very sensitive to the types of phrases that you use and the types of acronyms that you use. For instance, I was talking to my husband the other day and he had HTHP on his resume. And I said, well, you know, I know that that means, you know, high temperature, high pressure, but someone else outside of the industry is not going to know what that means. So if possible, you know, if you need to include that on your resume, make sure that you're spelling out that acronym first. And then in parentheses, you can list HTHP, right? So that's kind of a good rule of thumb in terms of making sure that you're not losing your audience whenever you're building out your content. And also they have limited interest. Unfortunately, I'm sure that many of you who are in senior level positions have looked through resumes before, and I'm sure that you can get that resume fatigue that a lot of recruiters get, where you're just looking through so many, none of them stand out, or if they stand out for the wrong reasons. Make sure that you're really trying to look as professional, concise in your style as much as you are in your content. So, you know, I'm going to give you some examples in terms of how to build out certain sections of the resume to make it look very direct, very concise. But just bear in mind that, you know, it is a human. after that ATS gets through it, it is still a human that will read it to call you in for that interview. So do your best to make sure that your resume is appealing, that it's not just in large blocks of content and paragraphs. If it looks like a dissertation or a novel, someone's probably not going to want to read it, right? So break it up visually. All right, yeah, so computer scanning systems. What do they have? Well, typically the inability to read between lines. It's very dated, like I said. They really prefer TXT format. The closest that you can get with some style still built into the content is a docx or a doc format, which whenever I work with my clients, I'll generally send them along 2 formats after I've completed their resumes. You know, one is in that docx format and the other is in PDF. The PDF is not the ideal way to upload your resume. So that's kind of one important hack. Make sure that if at all possible that you upload a doc or a docx format, because this is the format that's going to be universally accepted and processed best through those computer scanning systems. A PDF is really great for peer-to-peer sharing. It's really great for if you're networking with people and sharing it that way, because yes, the structure of it will not change. And that's really great. The computer scanning system doesn't like that though. It doesn't like content that can't be shifted. It wants to read it. So as it's trying to read it, that content is getting jumbled in the scanning system because it's looking for a very basic textual content, right? It's looking for that kind of format. So it confuses it. Right, so you want formats that are completely scannable in layout. You want light colored paper, and of course, appropriate keywords for your position target. And you're going to hear me say this a lot, appropriate keywords for position target. That resume has to be targeted. It can't be just a super general resume that shows you as a jack of all trades or a Jill of all trades, because that hiring manager and that scanning system are not going to see you as the perfect fit. They're going to see maybe they could be a good fit, but especially in this job market, you do not want to look like you're just a so-so fit. You want to look like an exact targeted fit, right? Right. So the decision makers, you've gotten through the two hurdles, and you've gotten to the VP, or whoever's going to make the decision to call you in for an interview. What they have is an interest in what makes you unique. Okay, so they've just scanned through 200 resumes. They're exhausted. They hate life, and now at this point, they want to see what you bring to the table. What's the value you're going to bring? Right. So really think of that resume not only as just a document, but think of it almost as like a brochure for you, right? If you were having to sell yourself, your value, your accomplishments in a brochure, right? Snippets, snapshots, what would you put in there? What would be the core things that you do best? Okay. And a good way to do this is to focus on results and value. They are looking for data. Quantify what you've done. Okay, so if you've drilled 20 wells over 2 quarters, that's a lot. But if you've done that, definitely highlight that in numbers. Okay, and you can do snapshots on that too, right? 20 wells over 2 quarters. They're going to be like, oh, okay. And then they're going to want to go to your work experience and see more details. So I do this a lot in resume building. I will kind of build out that top portion of the resume, treat it like prime real estate at the very top, where I have, key accomplishments, achievements, data just built into the top to convince the reader to want to go down to the work experience section and see things in more detail, right? So it's kind of like a lead. It's like a pitch. If you were trying to pitch a story to someone, if you're trying to convince them to keep listening, that's what that document is doing. It's trying to convince them to keep listening, keep reading, right? So generally resumes, once you've gotten to the decision maker, it requires marketing style and presentation, right? Just like I said, like a brochure. Okay, an easy to read layout. Oh, easy to read, please. Break up the content. Use bullet points. Please avoid, super long, dense blocks of text, or using semicolons or run-on sentences. I know it can be really, really tough to figure out how to build in all the things you've done. And I generally will see this a lot with people who have, 25, 30 plus years of experience, where, they have a 7 to 10 page resume or a CV, and they kind of hand it to me and they're like, sorry, which I say, I'm like, that's fine. I mean, I have my doctorate in English and I wrote a dissertation that was 200 pages long. So it's not a big deal for me. But I think that for considering how to break down content, it can be challenging to think through, okay, I've done all these things. Now, how do I actually convey what I did in a smaller amount of space, right? I mean, I generally will try to stick to 3 pages for someone who's at a high executive level with 25 to 30 plus years of experience. Because if you go beyond 3 pages, even if it's very visually appealing, unless you're in an international market where they want every single detail on that resume, you're going to lose your audience, right? So 2 to 3 pages is generally best if you're at that senior executive level. And that's generally where I tend to stay. So yeah, it's just remember your audience is human. If you don't want to read it, they probably don't either. Right. So again, an emphasis on quantifiable or proven results. If you can put it into data, that's perfect. That's the way you want to go. Do the who, what, when, where, why too of the data. So looking through what you've done, right? If you've drilled 20 wells, 2 quarters in the Permian and Eagle Ford for 3 companies, right? Like break it down to the who, what, when, where, why. And that is what's going to give you that really, really solid data to work from with your resume. Yeah, so some basic resume requirements. I get these questions a lot, so I always like to include them as well. White space and margins. If you would have asked me 5 years ago, I would have said 1-inch margins all around. That was all the rage. Now, a lot of recruiters prefer narrow margins. So you can just go into your margins on Word and set it to narrow. The reason for this is because whenever someone is physically reading through a resume, their eye is drawn to the white space, right? So instead of looking at your content, if you have a whole bunch of white space all the way around your resume, they're just going to look at the white space. That's just kind of how our eyes function and how our brains function too. We want a break. So we read a little content, then we glance at the white space. We read a little more content, glance at the white space. But again, if we only have a 7 to 10 second time period to capture someone, you don't want to waste it on white space. So, pardon me, so the narrow margins give you the chance to fit in more content in a way that's actually even more productive and that recruiters actually like. Right, so the use of a common font style, preferably a sans serif. And sans serif is important because it generally will not change or shift based off of which operating system you open it with. So there are some fonts that will go really wonky if you open them in, you know, a Mac as opposed to a PC or something like that. So it's important to bear in mind that there are some really basic, great sans serif fonts to stick to, and try your best to just not go off the deep end. You know, no using Curls NT or something crazy like that. I use Arial a lot. Arial is great. It's easy to read. It's not too condensed. But if you go beyond an 11-point font, it can get very large. So bear in mind also font size, right? So font size generally not below 10 point. People can't read it. They won't read your resume. Trust me. It's not going to help for you to put more content on there and just make it smaller, because you never know who's going to be reading it. And especially if there's someone who has eye problems, is reading a ton of resumes, or is at an advanced age, they are not going to want to read that tiny font. And they're just going to look at it and go, nope, and toss it out. And that is literally the last reason that you want someone to throw your resume out. Okay. Also, font size generally not above 14 point. Now, this is relevant for your body content. Okay, so if you're doing your header with your name and things like that, you can go as large as 20, no problem. You know, you want your name to be nice and bold. You don't want them to forget it, so that's totally fine to go larger on that. But if you're in your body content and you have your headings and things like that, I wouldn't go above 14 point. Even with Arial, I wouldn't really go above 12 point because that starts getting very large. Always list dates and cover gaps if possible. This is the ideal way to list your dates, right? 4/2006 to 5/2007. That's perfect. You know, don't get fancy with it. This is the best way for it to input into the job application systems because that's the type of format that it's looking for. So save yourself some time. I would say only include a maximum of 15 years or approximately 4 positions. Now this can depend on the person to person. And this is a fairly recent development actually, sticking to 15 years. There's still plenty of time since I work with senior and executive level clients. I'll generally stop at 20 years just because there's still some really great nuggets on there that I don't want to give up, especially if they've been, you know, someone who does subsurface operations in deep water for, you know, 25 plus years, and they have more than 4 positions that speak to that and more, you know, 20 years of doing it, then yes, I am going to include all those things. But just be mindful, again, that if you start going into an extensive amount of pages, trying to go through all of your positions, and if not all of them are relevant, right? If not all of them are relevant to the exact job description you're applying for, just be careful about, you know, going overboard with including so much information that, again, you lose your reader. Okay, avoid listing personal information. I'll kind of show this here in a minute when I go into the resume details. You don't need to put your entire personal address. There's no need for that. All employers are looking for is where you're located. They just want to know, are you in Houston? Good. Are you in Canada? Where? Right? Because they're only looking at that for where you're located and if they would need to ask you to relocate. Okay, so they don't need to know your exact address. And in fact, you should not put your personal address on there. You don't want to run into any issues with somebody using that inappropriately. Another thing I run into sometimes is people about what you use for your template, because again, sometimes that can actually affect the scannability of the resume, and it can, honestly, it can affect you getting a job, because if you have content, important content in that document that isn't scannable, then a recruiter on the back end is going to get your resume and it's not going to have the details in there, because they're going to be put into unscannable portions, right? So something like even a header, which I'll mention that here in a moment. Putting content in a header is a huge no-no, because those scanning systems don't read them. They don't read headers. So what will happen is that you'll have a whole bunch of great content and they won't know who it's from. So they'll have no clue. So yeah, just keep that in mind. All right, so key sections in a resume. Of course, your personal information. Executive summary. This is something that's still fairly new. Within, I think, probably the past 2 to 3 years, executive summaries have become a thing. Before it was more an objective. You give an objective of what you're going to do. And this is even whenever I taught at Texas A&M, this was what they were telling us to do, was do an objective. And I think now it's become common practice to do an executive summary so that you can provide a whole snapshot of yourself as a professional, rather than saying I'm pursuing, X position at X company, which yes, they know, right? They know you're pursuing this job because you applied for it online. So I think that's where this switch is coming from, to change from an objective to something a bit more specific and, kind of detailed in some of the value that you'll bring, rather than kind of doing something so general that, people can understand that from the outset. Skills and technology. These are extremely important for you guys who are drilling engineers. Got to include all those software competencies. If you know Aries, if you know Spotfire, if you've dabbled in, was it Reservoir Engineers or Geos that use IHS Builder, or any of those, right? Make sure to include those on your resume, because a lot of times those technical proficiencies will set you apart from other people. So, I've had people who have told me they've been hired just because they had proficiency in JD Edwards, if they're in sales or supply chain logistics, because they had that on their resume, right? So don't skip on the technical skills, and also don't put the technical skills all the way at the bottom. I see this a lot too, putting those technical skills all the way at the bottom. Again, if we only have 7 to 10 seconds for someone to scan that, you don't want them to have to go all the way to the bottom of your resume to see that you're proficient in, Amazon cloud, right? Cloud computing. That's important. We want that front and center, right? So key achievements are also extremely important. I generally will include about between 3 to 5 pieces of content there in the key achievement section. And these are really just one-liners. It's not meant to be super in-depth. It's meant to be a pitch to convince someone to read more. That's what we're doing with these key achievements, is showing them up front the value that you bring, convincing them to want to read more to bring you in for an interview, right? And only then going into your professional experience or work history. Then you've led them in, they're primed, they're ready, they want to know more, right? Okay, and then your education as well at the bottom. So this especially for people who are, in the senior level, and even, mid-career, education should generally go at the bottom, because you're not an entry-level person. If you're entry-level and you have a lot of, very little experience in the field so far, or very little experience in, in life and work, then putting your education, near the top, that can be relevant as long as you had a great GPA or something really stand out, then that can be great for those entry-level people. Optional awards, professional associations, volunteering, community service, all those things are also really great to include. But again, kind of putting those near the bottom, because not all of them are going to be relevant to the job title, right? So just bear in mind, you want to have the really important details that are really direct and targeted to that job title up top. And only then, right, think about it as a reader, if you're like, wow, this person's a great candidate, And then they kept reading and they got to the bottom and they see that, you know, you ran a triathlon, or, you know, you volunteered during Hurricane Katrina or, you know, Harvey or something. They're like, wow, and they're a great person, right? And that's what you want. You want that resume to be that kind of holistic snapshot of you as a professional, and to show that you're not only a good fit in terms of the value you bring, but also that you're a good fit in terms of culture, right? You're a good fit for their company culture. And that's sometimes what volunteering, community service, professional associations will do, you know, whenever you add those to your resume. They just don't necessarily need to go front and center. All right, so your personal information, you always want to put your name on the top line. Of course, right? Include your contact information, like city and state rather than full address, which is what I mentioned earlier. Phone number with a voicemail. I mentioned this just because I've had it happen a few times where someone will list a number, even when I'm calling for a consultation, and they don't have a voicemail. And I always think in my head, what if I was an employer and I was calling to tell them that they were being called in for a job interview and they didn't have a voicemail? More than likely, they just wouldn't know who that person was. Whenever they called back, they would probably approach them like a stranger, not knowing who they were, not giving the best impression they possibly could. Just make sure that your phone has a voicemail set up. Make sure that that voicemail is free of messages so that it's not full. Sometimes that can happen too. So yeah, just a little tip. Website and or a customized LinkedIn hyperlink. Yeah, so we'll go into LinkedIn here in a little bit, but customizing your LinkedIn hyperlink is really, really great for adding to your resume, so they can just highlight and paste and find you there too, and see that everything aligns, you're perfectly targeted, you're a great candidate, right? And how you customize that hyperlink, you know, there's some details on how you do that. You go into your settings and privacy, and then you can edit it from there. But generally, if you look at your profile, you'll see that there's a long string of numbers after your name. You want those numbers deleted, right? So you can go in, you can edit that out just to make it your name, and that's ideal. That's what you want. Your email address, ideally no AOL or Hotmail. These email addresses, unfortunately, I've heard a lot of recruiters actually throw people out immediately when they see a Hotmail or an AOL, which in some cases I've actually commented could be ageism. Just my opinion. But I also want to give that hack to you guys so that you're aware that a lot of recruiters will do this, or HR managers sometimes will do this. It's not true necessarily across the board, but it happens a lot. So just be very careful about what email address you're using. Use Gmail or Yahoo. Those are the two that are most prevalent right now and the most accepted. So it doesn't date you. It doesn't, you know, it gives the best impression to whoever's looking at it. Okay. And I also mentioned at the bottom here, you know, don't list your contact information for work, which I'm sure most of you know, and avoid putting important details in that header. Right. So samples. Okay. So sample heading, very clean, right? Very, very clean. George M. Stevens, you have your LinkedIn hyperlink, your location, not your full address, right? Your zip code. Definitely feel free to include your zip code, right? If somebody saw your zip code, you know, for instance, you know, I'm in Houston. If somebody saw my zip code, they'd be like, oh, she's in the energy corridor. Awesome. I have a cousin that's in the energy corridor. Sometimes that can create kind of a synergy between you and the person reading it. So there's no problem with including your zip code. Just don't include your full personal details. Then of course your phone and your email, right? It's very basic, keep very basic. There's another example here with a little bit more style to it. You know, Randall Smith PE, operations direction and well optimization, right? So there's sometimes where I'll actually include a little snippet of what they're good at there in the heading, and then below it include their contact details. So what you're doing is you're kind of sandwiching, you know, kind of giving them that snapshot right up front, right? Again, we're treating that top portion like it's prime real estate. So if you can fit in something unique that shows that, you know, hey, here's the value I bring right up front, right in my heading, right in my contact details, that stands out because most people don't do that. Okay. And again, this is not a real person, so don't use that. Right, grab their attention. Okay, so here is an example of how I might structure the top portion of a resume for a drilling specialist. Okay, so senior drilling specialist, that is the job you're pursuing. Okay, rather than an objective, you just put that at the top. You're pursuing a senior drilling specialist position, right? You specialize in well optimization. You have drilled 110 plus wells, and you specialize in project management, right? So it really pops. It stands out. It makes you look like, wow, okay, you're already accomplished, and you've only read the first 2 lines, right? It just looks very direct. Okay, so here's an example of an executive summary. Okay, so self-motivated senior drilling specialist. Let's see, I might need to move this little thing. So read it. There we go. Offering 7+ years experience, directing drilling completions of unconventional assets, including, right, and then you go into location, right? So already you've included the years of experience you've been doing this. Your specializations, now you're talking about locations, right? Locations that you've been in. Okay, Austin Chalk, Eagle Ford, Cotton Valley plays in Texas and Louisiana for major operators. Okay, so you're a big deal, all right? You're a big deal. That's basically what this is saying here. Expertise in rig supervision, cost controls, data analysis, staff management to minimize efficiencies and maximize production. Now, I don't know if you guys can tell, but there's a movement to this executive summary, right? There's a movement. It's pushing forward. You're minimizing efficiencies, you're maximizing production, right? There's a push. Hands-on project manager with an 11-year background in construction management that has directly contributed to delivering results and decreasing costs and project optimization. Just direct, right? So what I'm trying to highlight here in terms of the executive summary is that this is, you know, roughly 3 to 4 sentences. It's not very much content, but it has a lot of movement and a lot of direct push for someone to want to read it and for someone to really want to see you as a specialist in this field. Okay. Put this back up top. I'm trying to hide this thing. Keeps getting in my way. Oh, there we go. Tiny. Okay, so here's where I might go into the key achievements, right? So decreased total well cost from 50K to I said decreased, it's just an increased. In 2 years, despite a rising commodity market. Drilled 92+ wells as a primary drilling engineer throughout Texas and Louisiana. Reduced drilling days by 40% on average. See what I'm doing? There's a whole bunch of data here, right? A whole bunch of data plugged in for your key achievements so that you're just going right into something that's super high impact, okay? Right, so again, this is another way to structure that executive summary portion. Okay, so innovative energy executive, 25+ years of delivering exceptional value to clients, patients, and staff. Energy leadership, financial transformation, staff leadership. See what I mean? There's a movement to this, right? We're pushing forward, and now you're actually spoon feeding them what they need to know about why you're an exceptional candidate, right? So some items to include, right? Overview of your key areas of relevant experience, providing a marketing summary of unique value. You're listing keywords and position for targets. You can include bulleted sentences, short paragraphs, bulleted lists. I hope this kind of gives you an example of what it would look like to have, you know, all these different types of things lined up visually, right? So seeing it visually, it's really easy on the eyes to read it that way. And that's really important. All right. You could even include key certifications or licenses. You know, if you have, you know, well control certification or something like that, that'd be great to include as well in that executive summary. And again, you know, computer proficiencies, language proficiencies, also important. Right, so I just briefly want to touch on this. I have a lot of people ask me the distinction between, do I need to list it with the dates? Short answer to this is yes. It is ideal that you have a chronological style for your resume. The reason for this is that recruiters are looking for a chronological job history. They want to see that you worked from point A to point B all the way through. When they see gaps, they get scared. So that's the short answer to that, right? So you're listing in reverse chronological order. You're including dates, you're including job descriptions, quantifiable results and accomplishments. The benefits of this, yes, stable career history, right? There's also a combination style you can use, where you use kind of functional categories of experience, which would be, kind of what you excel at. Okay, so if you're really good at operations, project management, cost controls, you highlight that more than you highlight the chronology of what you've done, right? So you say, but I'm really good at these things, but I haven't necessarily had a clear career trajectory. So sometimes there's a combination you can work with there, right? Emphasis on transferable skills, not necessarily on employment. This is great for career changers. I do this a lot for career changers, okay? Education and training, right? Having degrees, relevant courses, certifications. Always include your higher level degrees after your name in the heading. If you have an MS, that MS needs to go right next to your name in the heading, right? This is why I put Amanda Rico, PhD. It immediately gives you a boost because it shows they don't have to go all the way down to the education portion of your resume to see that you have an MBA. They know right up top that you're a thought leader. They know right up top that you spent however many years getting that MBA, right? You're on the level, you're there, right? So some education examples, how you could structure it. Nothing groundbreaking here. Pretty just clear cut. And I also include as a caveat, avoid adding your graduation dates if you're a senior or executive level professional for the most part. If you graduated in 1992, don't really need to know that. Just put that you have the BS or the MS or and where you got it from. That's all that needs to go on there. Also note, also optional sections, awards and honors, professional associations, right? AAD. Again, volunteer and community outreach, publications. This is great for anyone who's a reservoir engineer or a geo. A lot of you guys do a lot of publications, so. Yeah, so let's touch on LinkedIn. Right, so LinkedIn best practices. It's really, really important to kind of hone in on what's ideal to put on that LinkedIn profile. Okay, so writing a complete and professional LinkedIn profile is really a critical part of applying for a job online. Your first step really needs to be to get your profile to all-star status. It's extremely important to make sure that your profile is complete, because if you don't have it that way, then more than likely you're missing a chance for a recruiter to be finding you, right? So it's not just that, oh, I'm missing content here or there. It's that you're less searchable. Everything that you put in that LinkedIn profile is searchable. Okay, so, sorry, got a cat here that was bugging me. Everything on that LinkedIn profile is searchable. So whenever you have more content on there, you come up higher in searches, and that's what you want if you're trying to find a job, right? So give readers some visual interest, break up content with bullet points in your about sections, your work experience sections. Again, these are humans trying to read content, so make sure that it's not the block paragraphs. Right, call attention to data and proven accomplishments and inject some personality. You can even, start it by saying, hi, I'm X. I specialize in XYZ, right? So kind of having that, especially in your about section, is a great space to show people that, again, you're not only a good fit for the job, you're also a good fit for their culture. Because recruiters will find you on LinkedIn I think the number is now 94% of recruiters are using LinkedIn almost exclusively to find and vet candidates. So really, really, really spend some time on that LinkedIn. Right, so how to earn all-star status. What is that thing? How do you do it? Add your industry and location. Add dates to your work experience. Upload a profile photo. I still see a lot of people that don't have a profile photo. Please upload a profile photo. Just something simple. Doesn't have to be perfect. Preferably without a hat or sunglasses on. Preferably just you, your face. You know, having a family photo is great, but the question then becomes, okay, who is this person that I'm vetting? Because I see 3 other people in this picture. So be very careful about including photos with, you know, other people in them. I've had that happen a couple of times where I've gone into a consultation and I've had to ask them, so are you the one on the right or the left? Or which one are you? Because if I'm going to edit your LinkedIn profile, I need to know which face to choose. So just be mindful of those things. And also in your in your photo, just be mindful that some people, some companies, you don't want them to know too much about you. Okay, so you know, LinkedIn isn't necessarily Facebook, so you don't want them to have any reason to try to discriminate against you or anything like that. So just keep it, you know, just your face. You're the candidate, you know, that's it. Add employment dates to your experience section. Fill out the education section. Please put down if you have education. If you don't, it's totally fine. Add at least 5 skills to your skills and endorsement section. Add a summary and about, right? And connect with at least 50 other professionals on LinkedIn and really work to try to build that, right? The LinkedIn algorithm loves when people engage with other people. So do your best to try to engage, like, comment, post on LinkedIn regularly so that you'll get more profile views and you'll come up higher in searches, right? Right, so provide a snapshot. Okay, so in your about section, this is kind of an example. Hello, I'm John, right? My specialty is optimizing horizontal wells and executing complex multi-million-dollar projects end-to-end for drilling operations across 4 continents. With 20 plus years of experience, oil and gas experience in senior level management, staff, and consulting roles, such as I've had the opportunity to wear multiple hats, providing exceptional value to the companies, crews, and customers I serve. Something very simple, very professional, very direct, right? It tells you right up front, I'm friendly, I'm personable, and I'm good at what I do. All right. You know, here's another thing, you know, that you could add. So again, kind of maybe taking something from your resume that you have. Visual interest, improvement, accomplishments. Here's what I'm good at: cost controls, QSHE and safety, operations optimization. Putting that in your summary and about section, that's awesome, because whenever recruiters come and find you, they're going to be able to see that these are the things you excel at right off the bat, right? So it's important to remember that LinkedIn actually scans your content. It's not just your resume that could scan, your LinkedIn does too. So yeah, I put here, did you know that your skills and endorsement section of LinkedIn actually isn't the ideal place to put your skills? I actually just posted about this today on LinkedIn. And it's because it's kind of a common misconception that if there's a skills section, that's where your skills should go and that's it. But actually you should build in your skills into every single portion of your LinkedIn, because your headline, your summary, and your work experience are among the most scanned sections of your LinkedIn. So the more content you put in there, the better you will come up in searches. Okay, so adding specific hard skills and keywords into certain sections, that's great. The algorithm will pick them up and scan them. Right, so other sections also include, you know, past and present job titles. That's also very scannable. Oh, and I just went over this, right? Not weighted as heavily, but also very important. So yeah, without the right keywords, it's actually unlikely someone will find you for that job. So really need to build in that content so that someone will find you for that. You know, some examples of profile skills and keyword examples include, you know, successful experience in sales, project management, or operations, right? Accrued knowledge in business to business, and then including the acronym, because sometimes they will look for the acronym. B2B, or generally accounting, you know, generally accepted accounting principles, right? GAAP. Learn skills like Python, Aries, or Spotfire. These are things that people could punch into a search and find you. Yeah. Yeah, so key takeaways, you know, from chatting with you guys today. Target your resume on LinkedIn as closely as possible to those job descriptions. Avoid getting too personal, right, on your resume or your LinkedIn. Also, just bear in mind, I know we're talking about beating the downturn. Employers generally, they will be understanding about gaps right now. I've talked to a lot of people who are very nervous about having gaps. This is something that's happening to everyone. Okay, so, you know, please be kind to yourself. Don't worry too much about having a gap right now. This is, you know, just part of what everybody's going through with the pandemic. So, and then, yeah, aim for a clean, concise resume. And I added cover letter too, right? Because we didn't go over cover letters, but your resume and your cover letter also should look very similar to each other in terms of style and content. So that would be something to keep in mind as well. Research, reach out, and repeat in terms of filling your LinkedIn. Once you have it fully optimized, you got to reach out. You got to keep going. You got to keep pushing, even if it's not part of your personality. Please keep pushing, keep pushing. Okay. All right. And thank you guys. Thank you so much for having me. Here's, you know, my contact details for LinkedIn, my website, my email. Anyone who goes to my Twitter, please be kind. I haven't been on it in a while. I was included, but yeah, I'm much more active on LinkedIn. So yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. And I don't know if anybody had any questions. I know that we're kind of right at time, but I also wanted to pass it over to the organizers just in case they had something they wanted to say.
Well, let's see here.
Here's a question that says, how do I update my LinkedIn name for the hyperlink to remove the extra numbers?
Yeah. So let me actually see if I can show you. Okay, new share. We're going to go to my desktop. Okay, so actually I can't show you. I can't show you right now because I'm working on something for a client, and it would probably be professionally unethical for me to jump on LinkedIn right now. But so you go into your profile and settings. You know, if you click at the top portion of your profile, and you know, it's the area that has your face on it, right? And you kind of go to edit my profile. You go to privacy. Edit your public profile. From there, you can edit your custom URL. Okay, so it's actually listed under privacy. Okay, so, but you have to go into your settings on LinkedIn and edit it out that way. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you, Amanda.
Just great information.
Oh, good. Is a summary important for entry-level candidates?
Yes. Yes. A summary is important for any candidate because it provides that snapshot, right? If we are talking about a 7 to 10 second scan, then we want to make sure that anyone of any level sees you as a professional who is, you know, ready to go, who brings value, right? So if we only have 7 to 10 seconds, then that summary provides the overview somebody needs to see the snapshot and say, okay, yes, they're the right fit. Right.
Can you show us the way to send quick and sufficient messages to HR in order to get their attention?
That is a big question that I do not have time to answer. That would be a whole other presentation, honestly, because I would need to walk through how to create templates for that and yeah, stuff
So
like
can
that.
they contact you via email and possibly set up a time for you to help them individually?
Sure, yeah, feel free to contact me. Yeah, my email address is rico.editorial@gmail.com. They can absolutely connect with me on there. We could set up a time to chat.
Okay, perfect. Just a few more. I'm currently a student and had an internship this summer. However, I currently have been working at another job for the last 2 years. Which one should I list first?
Yeah, so that depends on the job. If you've been working at Domino's and you're applying for a drilling position, list the internship first. Yeah, the goal that I really want to drill in is target. You have to focus on targeting. You want that person, that HR manager, that recruiter to see you as the perfect fit. So what does that take, right? What does it take for them to see you as the perfect fit? If that job that you've had is, you're doing cost control related things, budgeting, you're doing some in-field work, working at work sites in construction, that could definitely fit into something like an operations management position in the oil field. So, kind of play with it, see what types of skills you've gleaned from, other things that you've done, other jobs that you've had that you may want to include, but make sure that all of the content that you use is completely tailored to the job you're pursuing. So that means that you don't just list everything on there. You don't just say, well, yeah, and I, delivered things and I did this and I did that, but it had no relevance to the job that you're pursuing, right? Really make sure you're honing in on very precise things.
Perfect. I think that about wraps us up. I know I want to be respectful of your time and everybody's time. We appreciate you very much. Matt, do you have anything else that you need to announce?
Yeah, again, everybody, if you're not a member of AADE, please join the AAD MidCon. And don't forget the clay shoot's coming up, so please sign up to volunteer or participate or sponsor. How about that? Hey, I did have one more question. There's so many people that are getting laid off left and right in our industry. Yeah. What do you see as the quickest way for someone to get the second they lose their job? What do you think the next step should be for them? Get their resume done, post it on LinkedIn. I mean, what's a quick way to get noticed again?
Yep, resume and networking. Honestly, the first thing that people should be doing is really reaching out to people that they haven't reached out to in a long time. That should be the first move. And, actually, I'll just use, kind of a anecdote that my husband, when he was laid off a year ago, what he started doing was he built out an Excel spreadsheet, and he actually made a list of people that he wanted to connect with. He made a list of when he contacted them, when he followed up, if it was a meaningful conversation that could be taken forward, and he actually treated it like it was a job. And that would be one of the best things that I can suggest is even if you are in a position where you've been laid off, treat that next stage of finding a position like a job, right? Because it will take that much work. It will take that much hustle. And I don't just say this because there's a downturn. I say this because this is how much it takes most of the time to find a new job. It's just extremely difficult right now because of the industry. So the more that you push, the more that you organize and you hustle, and yes, of course, update your resume, update your cover letter, your LinkedIn. Those are key pieces to making sure that somebody sees you as that complete package. But networking is the most important thing that you should do right off the bat. Call people you haven't talked to in a year who are in the industry. See how they're doing. Spend some time. If you can go out for a drink with them, go out. Just really spend the time,
Right. Or come to the clay shoot, everybody.
Or come to the clay shoot. Yeah, that's why
come volunteer, network. We're not charging to be there for volunteers, so come out and network, everybody.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, it's only through that people will offer you positions that you never thought you'd ever get. honestly, because people will see you as someone who's a leader. You know, they'll see you as, oh, but you're volunteering your time, or you get to actually talk to them one-on-one as a person rather than just reaching out to them cold and being like, hey, I'm looking for a job. Can you help me out? Like, you know, there's only so much of that you can do before people just start kind of tuning out. So the more you can engage in meaningful ways, talking to people, you know, treating LinkedIn like a handshake instead of like, you know, you're trying to beat someone over the head trying to get a job, that's really the best way to get back in the game.
That's great. Thank you again. Hey, everybody, I suggest instead of writing your own resume, you send it to Amanda Rico at Rico Editorial Services.
It's very nice of you.
There we go. Plug away, Amanda. And thank you again, everybody, for joining us for the AAD MidCon meeting with Amanda.
Thanks for having me. It's really nice to be here. Yeah, thanks, guys. And I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.